Good morning. My name is Leticia Velasquez. I'm in charge of the XSEDE Scholars webinar. Welcome all of you. It's my pleasure to introduce Carlos Monroy, who is a data scientist at the Rice Center for Digital Learning and Scholarship, where he works in learning analytics and big data. He received his PhD from Texas A&M in computer science. Thank
All right. So, good afternoon for those on the East Coast and Central Time, and good morning for those on the West Coast. Um, so, first of all, I would like to thank the Richard Tapia Center for Excellence and Equity for inviting me to present at this webinar and share some of my ideas, on my thoughts, but above all, some of my experience, both as a mentee in the past and also as a mentor, and also as a mentee, I would say, even now that let's put it this way, that I have finished my doctorate. But there are three main points that I would like to make through this webinar. The first one is, again, to walk you through this journey. The second one is my experience meeting Dr. Richard Tapia a few years ago here at Rice, and how that really changed my perspective about the importance of mentoring. And the final point is my recent participation at what is called the Heidelberg Laureate Forum in Germany, where I had the opportunity of meeting, really literally to hang out with a group of 25 both able Fields medalists and Turing Award recipients, which are considered both in computer science, or in mathematics and computer science, the equivalent of the Nobel Prize. And so these are the two pictures that you see on my introductory slide. So I would go back to one of the main points, which is why mentoring is essential, what is important. Then again, walk you through my mentoring journey, the story of how I met Dr. Tapia, and then I will touch on this idea of having passion for people, and how that I believe is extremely important when we consider mentoring at any level. And then I share this idea, the way I see this, as this inverse mentoring coefficient effect, how that has impacted my life. Then I will share some anecdotes, some stories about meeting these famous people a couple of months ago in Germany, and some of their fascinating stories. And then I will conclude with this idea of passing the torch. How do we make sure and enable other people to continue mentoring in the future? So, mentoring is essential. I think I will use this quote from Dr. Tapia from this talk he gave, I remember in April, called "Racism in Mathematics: A Direct Factor in Underrepresentation." And here in this, when you look at the slides, at this slide, the red arrow makes this point really clear. Underrepresentation endangers the health of the nation and not the health of the discipline. What I take from here is not to say that is not a danger for the discipline. Of course it is, but more importantly, it is an important problem for the nation, and we can think of the nation in like any big body or a big entity. But in this way, Dr. Tapia is talking about the country. And as I will proceed with my presentation, I will give some examples on how the work that he has been doing for many years has been so essential in addressing this important need in mentoring. So I will start with my first encounter with mentoring, and this is with my mom. So here a little bit of, this is a picture of my mom 3 years ago, and here is a little bit of trivia. So when I was in second grade, I'm originally from Guatemala, so when I was in second grade, my grade in English was A, 8 out of 100, B, 50 out of 100, or C, 35 out of 100. So the answer is, the animation doesn't work, but it was 8 out of 100. The answer is A. And I don't know, so my mom was an elementary school teacher at a public school. she knew my English teacher, and one day I still remember, she said, I talked to your teacher, and she said that you're struggling in English. So she started a program where after school she would do probably like 45 minutes or 1 hour of reinforcement and pretty much tutoring me in English. And this was for, I remember it was 3 or 4 days per week. So there are 2 points that I want to make here. One is how she spotted immediately the need for intervention. So she saw a problem and said, okay, we need to correct this. And she took ownership of that. The second point is, and for me, what I have here in red is the lesson that I learned from her. I remember it was not so much about the importance of learning English. At that point, I didn't even dream about, eventually I will come for grad school to the United States where I will need to speak English. But I don't know what I learned from her was responsibility. That I needed to be responsible on what I was doing, and at that particular time was my English class. And of course, I learned English. So in retrospect, I've never really thought about this specific event in my life, but if I look at that, I really see it as a first encounter I have with mentoring. And again, here the important point I want to make is this idea of to intervene and take ownership. The reason is because we care about people. Oh, here it is, yeah. The answer is 8 out of 100. Okay. So a couple of years after that, as many years after that, I came to Texas A&M to start my master's program. And so here I have some screenshots just to make the case of what it means for someone to come to a new environment, and there are so many unknown things. So the first one, I came in August of '99, and this was the screenshot of how the weather forecast will look like in August in Texas. So here I am in Texas. I remember wearing this very nice black Levi jeans and walking, trying to find housing, an apartment in College Station. It was brutal. But I didn't know. I didn't know about the second picture I want to show here is I remember going to this fast food restaurant and ordering something, and they would ask me really quick, for here to go. I couldn't understand what they were asking, and my answer was yes. Whatever. And I remember seeing their faces trying to figure out what I meant by that. So these are, if you want, silly examples, but to me it seems to show or help me to illustrate how being in a new environment can be really cumbersome for some people, as it was for me back then. The bottom one is then trying to choose what courses should I take. And I remember struggling with that because I didn't have anyone to tell me you should take this course, or you should enroll here, or in your first year perhaps you should consider taking this or taking that. So again, something that was really a problem with me, and this really helped me again to in the years after that to become aware of the importance of helping people in any environment, and I will share some of the stories in the next slides. So I started my master's program, and I was so fortunate of having a great academic advisor, Dr. Richard Tapia. I don't know if he had the name Richard start becoming some kind of coincidence relating to Richard Tapia, but Richard Tapia was my academic advisor. And I remember how he was extremely invested in the PhD students, and I will mention some examples. I remember how he was interested in us as a PhD students to be co-authors in publications all the time. One time I have an idea for what later on became my dissertation topic, and he was interested in pursuing this idea, and initially he suggested me to write a short paper for a conference that I don't know was rejected, but based on the feedback that we received, he suggested we should start thinking about coming up with an NSF grant proposal out of this paper. And of course, it was not just my work, but the work of his work and also the other co-PIs. But a few years later, our project was funded through an NSF grant. So that's two cases. The third one that I remember was when there were some visitors coming to give as a guest visitors or giving seminars. He will make sure that we as PhD students, we will showcase our research to them. So we will spend 20 minutes, half an hour in front of our computers talking to this visitor and showing what we were doing. And so many of the people that I, until this day, I know in academia and in research, like really big names, is because of that. Because he was really invested in making sure that we were able to expand our horizons, meet new people, and networking. In addition to that, we also have more traditional mentoring activities such as weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings. So, keep up with what we were doing, and also if there was something unexpected or problems that we were facing, having his feedback. But out of these things, really, I was able to have so many new opportunities. I remember being accepted at a doctoral consortium of one of the conferences in our field, and it was because of his pushing me to, thinking about applying here. Scholarships opportunities, attending conferences, and even at some point later on when I was in the last years of my PhD, winning a scholar prize for my work. So this for me was absolutely critical in what I have accomplished in the future, what he did. Now, I also would like to point out to the other two people in this slide, Dr. Valerie Taylor. Some of you might probably know her. A champion also of mentoring. And she was at that time the head of computer science in the department. I remember as head, she was busy all the time, but she always had time when I had like some idea or asking some questions about mentoring programs or ways in which we could help other students. She was always open to that. And until this day, I am still in contact with her. So again, that shows to me how the importance of really get to know people. But from the first step would be for whoever is your mentor to make sure that you are able to connect and network with other people. And the last but not the least is Dr. Thomas Yerger. He was not in my committee. He was in a different field. But I remember that when I was a PhD student, he looked really young, and I bumped into him at the cafeteria one day, and I asked him, "So are you a PhD student?" And he said, "No, I'm a professor." But he was really nice. And I remember when I was thinking about changing directions in my, I had already finished my PhD, and I was thinking about changing careers, not career, but direction of my research. I spoke with him. He said that won't be, and he was so helpful in understanding the pros and cons. So again, some examples on the importance of getting to know people in your department, or if you are already after you have graduated, in your own environment and beyond that, in order to share your ideas, share your problems, share your concerns. That for me has been so important. All right, so I'll move forward on reading my encounter with Dr. Richard Tapia. So this is a webinar he gave in April, I remember, of this year. It's phenomenal. He's a phenomenal speaker. And if you had a chance to see some of his webinar or meet him in person, he's a phenomenal speaker. But I met him about 3 or 4 years ago. Professor here at Rice, a friend of mine, she knew that I was doing some work on STEM education, and she said, "Oh, I will have Dr. Richard Tapia this semester giving a lecture." And I knew about him. I didn't really know what he was doing or what really his work was. I just knew about the Tapia conference. But I attended this presentation, this lecture he gave at this class. And by the way, it was in sociology, but he was talking about the problems in underrepresentation in STEM education. So I left the class, and literally I was on fire. He's so passionate. And this is the point, one of the points I want to make with this slide is that for me, mentoring is really an expression of a personal experience. So when I see, for example, the work that Dr. Tapia is doing and has done in mentoring and championing these issues, is because first and foremost, he has lived that. So it's not something, as my last point here is that mentoring is not an attachment. It's not something that you add on top of something. It's really something that comes from within you. And his genuine desire to help others. So that is the what I really learned from him. And I remember that after his presentation, I asked him, "Do you mind if I walk with you to your office?" And he said, "Oh, no problem." And we had a really great conversation. But someone who of his intellectual caliber, that been so down to earth and so candid about talking to me. And so that's something that really changed my life, and I will talk later in more detail about that. So going back to this idea, passion for people. So this is a picture, I think, from perhaps it's a Tapia conference. Some people here might probably correct me. One of the things that struck me with the picture is you see all happy faces here, and Richard Tapia is there, is kind of hidden behind some of the people in this picture. But I think that passion for people should be really the driving force. I think that you necessarily, probably when you are mentoring people, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen in their lives in the future, but for sure you have touched their lives in a particular way, and I will give some examples later on. But that's what I found in him, this being passionate about people, and therefore you invest in these people. Another critical thing that he has done is building a support system. So something that has a structure, a framework that enables to sustain this initiative. For sure, work hard, both as a mentor, there is a lot of time and effort involved in that, and also for us as a mentees, it really involves for us hard work, but it's really great. And here again, I would like to point out to what he always says: this is a puede, yes we can, in terms of mentoring. So in the next few slides, I will talk about some of things that I have done in the past few years, mentoring students in different environments. So I will start off by the story of this high school here in Houston. Is Lee High School in the southwest part of Houston. After the webinar, I don't want you to get distracted at this point, but if you go to Wikipedia and read about the story of this high school, I didn't know about anything, but the story is this. A colleague of my wife told me about, she was mentoring a group of students in this activities called First Robotics, and they were doing something about programming these robots to for a competition. And since she knew that I was a computer scientist, she said, "Well, do you mind coming and talking to them?" Most of them are Hispanics, talking to them and sharing about your career, because they are in the process of thinking about careers. And I was delighted. I went to the school. But you see here the demographics: 73% Hispanic, so most likely low-income families. And this is a picture of some of the students. They participated. One of the things that struck me about it was their enthusiasm, and really working after the school hours, staying until sometimes like 6 p.m. With this instructor, one of the teachers in the school, working on this project. And this really goes back to something that Dr. Rapi stresses a lot, is that to distinguish between the difference between lack of talent and lack of preparation, which especially when we are addressing the needs for mentoring underrepresented groups, this should be very important. We need to make sure that we foster in these people who are talented but perhaps lack the preparation, to make sure that they have the environment in order to succeed and excel. So here's another example. This is early this year. A friend of my family, she asked me, so the kids were participating in this VEX World Robotics competition, and on the right side you see what they were doing. But basically they had this robot. They had to pick up these balls and bring it to certain locations, and they had two modalities. One was they had to create a code in a version of C that in which they had to pre-program what the steps of the robot was. And the second was they had to control manually the robot. And they were stuck. They had a problem where the robot was not going to the right objectives. And initially they thought that the problem was with the code. So I do the picture, I'm there talking to them, and so I'm not an expert in robotics, so first of all I was really a little bit nervous about going there, because well, they they will see that I'm not an expert in robots, but I went and I looked to the best of my knowledge at the code, and I said, well, seems to me that the code is static, so the code is not changing, and I gave them some ideas on perhaps how to troubleshoot, but so I left the session, and this picture shows that these kids explaining to me their code and their problem. What I like to point out is their engagement, so how interested and invested they are in what they were doing. So I left this session, and when I was driving back home, it occurred to me that typically when you bring your car to the mechanic for alignment on your wheels, is because the car is not performing well in terms of direction. And so I went back to them and say, you perhaps might probably think about and make sure that the wheels and the mechanical part of the robots are fine. So the next day, they contact me back and they said that was the problem. So they ended up, when they went to the world competition, they ended up winning first and fourth place in a specific category. So I don't want to take credit for what it is, because I didn't really do anything, in my humble opinion. I'll just make a suggestion. But I was really happy about helping them and seeing their curiosity and their interest in getting engaged in STEM disciplines. So the next example is something that I've been doing for about 4 years. It's been a volunteer on what is called the Nano Days. This is the screenshot that you see here is from a video, YouTube video. And this is something organized by the Methodist Hospital Research Institute here in Houston. And what they do is they have a program where it's like an open house, and they have about, I think this year, roughly like 350, 400 kids. And they have all the scientists there, and postdocs and PhD students, and they explain to these kids things about nanotechnology. And the idea is to foster in them interest in scientific careers. So I've been doing this, and for me has been so inspiring for my own interest in mentoring. Okay, so I will talk a little bit about my current role with the Tapia Center for Excellence and Equity as a mentor. And here I will talk about this idea I have of the inverse mentoring coefficient effect. So for you mathematicians out there in the webinar, don't expect me to come up with a very complex equation to explain this. It's very simple. This is a picture of my mentee this year. Melinda Crane, by the way, is here next to me, helping, making sure everything runs smoothly here with this webinar. But for me, the impact of being a mentor has been this idea of giving back of what I've received. I'm so thankful for what I have received as a mentee in the past. So for me, it comes natural to give back. At the same time, I get inspired by the ideas of the mentees. Just listening to them, not only their problems, their struggles, but also their ideas, their dreams. It's really, for me, it makes me really happy. That's really, I would say, the outcome of the way this inverse coefficient effect function will really maximize. It really makes me happy, really, really happy. And also at the same time, relieves me, makes me live again my own journey. So those are the ideas that for me are really important in terms of being a mentor. Okay, so this will be like a little bit of a commercial and advertisement. So this is a picture of my son. He is a 6-year-old kid, and I was invited to his class, and I was talking about, we were doing this international week, so I was talking about my home country, Guatemala. But now he's in kindergarten, and what he told me one day this year was he came back home and he was really happy and said, "Daddy, you know that in school we have a book buddy." And so I asked him, "What is this book buddy?" So it's a 4th grader who once a week spends time with these kids reading. And it's a role model, and I will tell you why. He talks about him all the time, not only when they have these quote-unquote mentoring reading sessions, but just the fact that he sees this guy at recess. He says, "Oh, Daddy, today I saw," and by the way, his name is Richard. And again, I don't know if it's a coincidence, but going back to the impact of Richard Tapia, this kid's name is Richard. And it's for me, it has been so educational for me to see how even at that young age, the impact that mentoring, even in this case in an informal way, could have on people. So I will talk briefly about, before I then jump into meeting the Turings, the Abels, and the Fields. This is the other part of my talk. But I will talk about two stories, and this is with the permission of the people, and they are very close friends of mine. So the first one is of this guy who back in 2005 was visiting Texas A&M because he was thinking about grad school. And so I received an email from him, and I didn't know him, but he said, "I'm doing this. Would you mind if showing me about, talking me about the program, the department, pros, cons?" And I said, "Sure." And I met with him. He's Hispanic. Now in 2014, I had the privilege of seeing him very recently. He's a senior engineer at a big software company in the Silicon Valley. I will not give the name, but it's a big one. So he told me this story that when he started his master's program, he went to the secretary of the department and asked her, "Could you please give me the name of all the Hispanic students in the program?" So here's another trivia. What do you think that of these three items will fit all those names? A, this blog sheet, B, a post-it, or C, a card? So the answer is post-it. I think there were two. So I mean, it's interesting. I think perhaps now in 2014, perhaps those percentages have improved, but it seems to me someone who is there and is interested in networking with people that can help this person to grow in this step in his life. He mentioned, when I met him recently, he mentioned that participating at SACNAS was a life-changing factor for him. This is, I think, the Society for the Advancement of Chicanos and Hispanics in Science, I believe. But he said that participating there was so a big change in his life because it enabled him to new things that he didn't know about. And again, seeing these role models there, he got the chance to meet personally Dr. Tapia, and he said, well, for me, it was a really life-changing thing. And he told the story of once he joined this company, he found a mentor who was also Hispanic, and how that helped him in his career. After that, he became a mentor, and he just recently learned that his mentor, his mentee now has another mentee. So here we can talk about the mentoring chain effect, and we can think about like a third generation of mentoring. Or for those out there that more computational people, you can think of a tree. So now we are at the fourth level in this tree of mentorship. But it's really interesting for me to see seeing people how down the road in their lives they have also give back to what they have received in the past. The second one, and here I can name names because Josue is a very close friend of our family. He's a former Rice student, and he gave me permission to use, and he provided this picture. But I will tell briefly his story going from community college to MIT. By coincidence or not, he went to the same community college system in California where Dr. Tapia went. And he said that back then, conversating with these two mentors told him about the idea of spending, I think, one summer at Caltech doing a research internship, and how he really helped him to change his thinking about research. He then started undergrad, I think in physics at UC Berkeley, but it was very hard for him. And one of the reasons is because there was not enough support for him. He came across SACNA's video of Dr. Tapia talking about mentoring, and he just close here. And after watching that video, he gets really so interested in this program. He eventually transferred to Rice. He finished recently his undergrad at Rice, and he is now a grad student at MIT. And he was personally mentored by Dr. Tapia. But here's a quote that he told me. This is 2-3 days ago that I spoke with him. He said, I now feel more confident and comfortable at MIT than when I arrived at Rice because of the Tapia mentoring program. This is amazing to me. It's how you go at that level and you really, because of something, how a mentoring program has impacted your life, has enabled you to do this. But the other thing I want to point out here is how Josue is really invested and interested in not only excel in his academic career, but he talks about this, how can I impact people's life. So it's really beautiful for me in talking about the impact of mentoring. All right, so I'm going to shift gears here and get onto the last part of my talk about meeting the Turings, Abels, and Fields medalists. So at the end of last year, I saw on my subscription to ACM Communications magazine, I saw this announcement about the Heidelberg Laureate Forum in Germany. So I look at it, I went to the website. Basically, it's a gathering of about 25 Turing recipients, Abels and Fields medalists, which I mentioned before are the equivalents of Nobel laureates in both computer science and mathematics, and a group of 100 young computer scientists and mathematicians from all over the world. And this year was the second event, second forum, and it was organized by this person that you see in this screenshot, Klaus Schirra. He is one of the founders of this famous company, SAP. And this quote is really fascinating for me. Meeting with the scientific leaders of mathematics and computer science will be extremely inspiring and encouraging for the young scientists. That was for me the case, and I will, in the next slides, I will share all these anecdotes talking to these people. But here again, making connections to seeing someone who is invested in making sure that the next generation of people is also equipped, and there is this network, there is this support system that enables them to excel. So, how did he came up with this idea of the Heidelberg Laureate Forum? So, his foundation is a supporter of these Lindo Nobel Laureate meetings, and this is a gathering similar to what I just described in Germany, but this is being ongoing for almost 65 years, or 64 years, I believe. And this is a gathering of about 300 300 young scientists from different disciplines and Nobel laureates, about 50 per year, and all the different disciplines. And the idea again is to engage these laureates with the young scientists and the young researchers to make sure that the torch is passed to the next generation. So Mr. Schirra, since Foundation puts money on supporting this idea, one day he started thinking, we should be doing something similar for computer science. And one of his friends said, we should be doing something with computer science and mathematics. So that's how this Heidelberg Laureate Forum started 2 years ago. And for me, it was really fascinating to see again someone who you can tell how invested is in this idea. All right, so let me go through some of the meeting these people. So first thing I thought at the beginning when I saw this about this forum was, there is no way that I'm going to be accepted. I mean, I said like, oh my gosh, I mean, they are the Turings, are the Abels, are the Fields. There is no way that I'm going to be accepted there. But I found a website with a blog, and there was a friend of mine from A&M a few years, now he's at Oxford, a mathematician from Germany, and I saw his name in one blog entry talking about his participation last year, so I contacted him, and his answer was, you should apply. So, skeptical, really skeptical, but I applied, submitted my application, and I had to request 3 letters of recommendation. And I really believe that these letter of recommendations were critical for me being accepted in this event. So I got the notification that you have no idea of how, for me was, if you are a big fan of sports, like for example soccer, it's like meeting with your stars, with your really people that you see on the World Cup or in these big events. If you are an NBA fan, the same can be applied, meeting Michael Jordan, you name it. So that was for me the equivalent of this meeting. So here I am, in this picture I am with John Hopker. He's a Turing recipient in '86. I remember as an undergrad this book about, I think it was about data structures, and it's was written by it's Ullman, Hopcroft, and Aho. This three is like one of the Bibles of computer science. So here I'm in front of him talking with other at this recent forum. But there is one thing that he mentioned, and this is what it says here: is be passionate about what you are working on. What he said, one of the questions I asked him was if he can think of a moment in which he was struggling in his career, and he said, "Well, I can tell you. I remember at that time he was studying a professor at Princeton or Cornell. He's at Cornell now, but I don't remember his Princeton. I think it was Cornell. So he became an assistant professor, just new one coming from out of grad school, and he was asked, "Could you please teach a course in computer science?" He said, "Well, I've never." He's from electrical engineering, by the way. So he said, "Well, I don't know anything about computer science. It's a new field." But he said, "Well, just go and figure." And he said, "Well, one of the cool things about it that I had to invent things, that were really new." So nonetheless, so a few years, some years later, he became a Turing recipient. But the point I want to make here is, for us, is to don't think about obstacles that we see in front of us as something that will impair our progress, but rather as an opportunity for us to grow. Here I am with Michael Atiyah. He's a mathematician. Phenomenal person. He gave a presentation about the beauty of mathematics that, as you can guess, was such a phenomenal and a beautiful presentation. But after his talk, I was talking with him, and we were a group of people, mostly from, I remember from Latin America, this group, we were like 5 or 6. There were some people from Mexico, some from Colombia, and so we were asking him questions, and for me it was really amazing how he remembered the name of his former PhD students, and he remembered these people. Yes, I remember this person from Mexico, I have one from Colombia, his name was this, and how they became researchers. And in addition to his accolades, he's both Fields Medalist and also an able medalist, as you can tell from this slide. But I really found fascinating his simplicity and how he remembered all his students as he over these years, how he remembered them. So this is again something that I found extremely important, and either we become mentors, really this personal relationship that we have with these people. Here I'm with Manuel Bloom, fascinating personality. Manuel Bloom, in addition of being a Turing recipient in '95, 3 of his former PhD students or postdocs have become Turing recipients. 2 of them last year, Sylvia McCallie and Shafi Wasser, I think is her last name. Both I think are now at MIT, but working on cryptography and really cool stuff. But 3 of his former students have become Turing recipients. And one of his former students, who is now a very young professor at Carnegie Mellon, who some of you might probably know, Luis Bonan, he's from Guatemala. And so I spent like 25 minutes with him during this. We were doing a boat tour on this river. And I talked to him and I asked him, "What is your secret? Why is it possible that you are so inspiring for your students?" And also because his presentation was really in which he actually talked to a person in the audience who was a student, asked her by name, gave her involvement in his presentation. And he said, "Because I love my students," and that's the quote that you see up there. And again, I found for me so enriching personally and professionally this level of involvement with people. To the point that the picture that you see here was taken, he asked me if it was okay for me to someone take a picture of both of us. I think he emailed me the picture. But such a great person, again, involving in making sure that his students excel. Next one, this is Ivan Sutherland, Turing 90 and 88. And here we were at this part of the event was we were drinking some wine. So you see in a very relaxing environment. He's one of the pioneers in computing graphics and starting the fire of this sketchpad. But I asked him, if you look back in your life and you think about your story, at some point you might a tutor recipient, but back then, what were these troubles you went through? And he said, well, I can tell you this. 1% is inspiration, 10% is hard work, and in fact, when we were talking, he said, and 90% is pure luck. And so maybe some of the other young scientists were there and said, that will make it 101%. And he corrected us. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. 89% is pure luck. But what I would like to point out here is of this 1% inspiration. For me, this is extremely critical in the aspect of mentoring. As I mentioned in some of the previous slides with the examples, and I applied to my life, how for me it has been so inspirational, this aspect of mentoring, meeting these people, either Dr. Richard Tapia, for example, or my PhD mentor. For me, it's so inspiring. Vinton Cerf, Turing Award on 04. So I had dinner with him the first time. We were 9 at the table. He's one of the pioneers. He is considered two of the fathers of the internet for the implementation of TCP/IP. And he was absolutely engaged in talking to all of the participants. Number one. Number two, I had opportunity like 3 or 4 times after that to talk to him and a group of other young participants. But I saw him really extremely engaged with these young people, and again for me was really made me really growth in terms of thinking about when we as mentors to be really involved with the people that we are mentoring at any point in time. This is speaker now, tutor recipient in 04. I remember for those of you in computer science, there is this famous notation. It's called BNF, the Backus-Naur form. So the Naur stands for the N on this notation is after him. So he was telling me the story of he started as an astronomer in Denmark. He went to Cambridge in England because he wanted to learn more about to do some astronomy work. The problem was that since it's cloudy in England, it was hard for him to do astronomy. But nonetheless, he started doing some work on computing. But before that, as a young kid, as a teenager in Denmark, he will go to this observatory, and he became friends with these astronomers. And he was so engaged with astronomy that was really pushed his life forward. And again, I wanted to highlight this aspect of how interacting with these people, or this encountering these people in his life, make a huge difference for him. The next one, this is Stephen Cook, Turing Award recipient in 82. I had dinner with him, and we were 9, with him and his wife, and the last day of the event. And he's one of the pioneers on this theoretical aspect of computer science and the NP completeness. I'm not going to go in details for this, but in his story, he started as assistant professor at Berkeley. He was denied tenure. He didn't get tenure at Berkeley, so he had to move. That's in 1970. At that point, there were not that many computer science departments. So he ended up going to Toronto in Canada. A few years later, he was awarded the Turing Award. And what he was telling me is, don't let the setbacks or hardships in your life stop your journey. And so for me, it's again thinking, in my case, at any point in my life, both as a student or now in my professional and academic career, don't let these setbacks. Use them as a way for us to grow. But I think that also important along these lines is the fact that making sure there is a network, that there is a supporting system for us. And I think that that's something extremely important if we think or talk about the aspects of mentorship. All right, so I'm getting to the end of my webinar, and I will make the final point, which is let's pass the torch. This is a beautiful picture of Dr. Richard Tapia receiving from President Obama the Presidential Medal of Science in 2011, and in a, for his contributions to optimization and completing optimization in mathematics. But I remember Dr. Tapia talking about how President Obama was emphasizing also the work that he does, that he has done, he's doing, and he will continue to do in ensuring that especially people from traditionally underrepresented groups excel in these fields. And again, in other words, it's really praising his involvement in mentoring. But I will go back from this slide to the initial point of my first encounter with Dr. Tapia, and that was for me seeing someone who has lived through these events in his life, and therefore mentoring for him has been something that is not an attachment, but rather something that is an integral part of his life. And this is really, for me, what I would like to give as a message out of this webinar, to make whatever our role is, whether it is a mentee or as a mentor, to make sure there is something that it comes from our own life that we can then pass to the next generation of future scientists. And by the way, we don't even know how we are going to impact those people's lives. As from in my case was the fact with this person that I mentioned, I'm meeting at A&M in 2005, and telling him about the opportunities in the computer science program there. I didn't know that in 2014 he will be a well-respected senior software scientist in one of the largest, if not the largest, software company in the world. So I would like to thank all different people that have been so instrumental in this path for me. Even some of my collaborators, mentors, advisors at the Rice Tapia Center for Excellence and Equity. I would like to thank Dr. Tapia, Dr. Leticia Velasquez, who is just next to me, Juliet Stipice, which is also part of the team, and other people, Josué Lopez, who graciously allowed me to share his story, my friend in California also, and Melinda Crane, who is my mentee here, which is next to me. So I will stop there, and I will open for some questions in the remainder of the time that we have. And for the questions, I think you can ask the questions by typing on the chat, and I will read from there and answer. And one of the things, the questions that are coming, that I would recommend for of you out there is to think about participating in this the highly regulated forum. I know that the submissions have just started. I think February is the deadline. But absolutely, if either any of you are there interested in this participating in this forum, I strongly recommend that, number one, or sharing with other people that you might know out there also to think about participating. The link, oh yes, for the, I will send the, there's a request here to send the link for registering for the Laureate Forum. Yes, I can share that, and feel free if you want some tips on that I can help you with that. Please, yes, you can contact me. My contact information is there on the slide. But yes. And again, here, something I would like to stress out here that I made the case throughout the presentation is really the impact that we can have with people that we encounter in our own lives that we don't know again in the future, but their lives can be impacted by that. So there's a question here: how many mentors have you had so far, and how many mentees have you helped so far? Formally, I think that the way I would see this, like as I mentioned before, I would really start by counting my mom as really my first mentor, not necessarily in my field. But I would say that as an undergrad, there was a professor who was the head of the department. He's not a very close friend of mine now, but I really remember him being so helpful, helping me as I was starting my first steps in as an undergrad in computer science. Um, then the second one would be my advisor at Texas A&M, Richard Tapia. I'm sorry, Richard Tapia, as well as there were other two people in my committee. Dr. Felipe Castro was another fractional. So that would be like 3, 4. Mentees, I don't really know the numbers because I've been so many, as I mentioned before, from high school, middle school, and also presently I'm a mentor of two students. I have one who is a freshman in computer science, and the other one that I think is a grad student at Illinois. That is two mentees that I'm presently mentoring. Okay, there is a question here. Here's one. What percentage of work would you recommend to be devoted to mentee versus being a mentee? Let's move in here. And how mentee should it be numbered? I think that there should be a balance because for sure, I mean, one of the things that I really believe is that people are busy all the time. But I think that should not be. Sometimes I think that I think that is more of a quality rather than quantity. You might probably think of like having like more constant meetings with your mentees or as a mentor, but perhaps sometimes it is more of a quality. As I said, I'm mentoring 2 people now, and we do I think like it's at least once a month we met for half an hour, but I am really free to if they need to ask any questions or they have any problems. So for me, like really more, I see like a more informal in that way, in the sense that rather than having like a pre-established schedule that you should have, I'm not saying that you should, but it's more like really as something that, to be honest, comes from your heart. If I have to really talk about like Dr. Tapia, for example, in his case, it's really something that I'm certain that he's super busy, but anytime that I have the need to talk to him about different issues, different things, I email him and he will have time for that. So that will be really my answer, is to make sure that yes, you take care of your things, but at the same time, in the same way that for me has been so critical that these people have been for me there when I meet them, for us as a mentors have that time for them. There's a second question. So will you offer a few thoughts to us on your experience with respect to roles overlapping, for example, technical advisor essential for a specific project, might not serve as needed organization or advocating the advisors outside the organization. The same person might be in a position to. Okay, so I think the question here is, I think it's a good question. On the one, you're welcome, A.M. Wood, I think. Oh, yes, A.M. Wood, you're welcome for, I'm glad for asking us. So, to Erica, I think that this is a very good question because sometimes there could be like 2 ways of seeing the mentorship role. On the one hand, is someone who might be really knowledgeable on your field, but not necessarily great in terms of mentoring, in the sense of pushing you beyond really your academic aspect of your work, which is very important. But on the other hand, you also need someone who can help you in other type of issues that you might be facing in your career as a student. I really think that It really depends. One way would be to look if there are any established network out there. Once you are in a specific institution, if there is an established network there or outside. A couple of examples that I mentioned here with SACNAS, that I think that on the one hand, and by the way, you can meet people who are experts in your field, but might not necessarily be in your own institution, because as your question, I think, illustrates this fact, is that sometimes you might probably have very good technical people that knows about your scientific discipline in your institution, but perhaps they, for different reasons, they might not probably invested in mentoring. So you will probably have to find them elsewhere. So for instance, again, going back to the idea of networking, one way would be if you are in computer science and STEM disciplines, the Tapia conference, for example, in SACNAS, XSEDE, I think, is another organization where you can really network, you can meet different people, and from there you can. But I think it's a good question to finding both, like both perspectives. So I think that I will stop here. I'm seeing here the sign that says the red sign here that I need to finish. Again, I would like to thank the Tapia Center for Equity and Excellence for inviting me. Thank you for you who participated and for listening. I was really happy to share this story with me, and I hope that will help people out there in the future.